a clinical stench that always seems to linger in pediatric emergency departments. My name is Violet. I am 28 years old, an active-duty military logistics specialist, and until that exact moment, I believed a mother's fiercest battle would always be fought on the outside, protecting her child from the world. My 3-year-old daughter, Lily, lay beneath the harsh fluorescent lights, her tiny chest heaving as she struggled for every single breath. The doctor had just pulled me out into the corridor, his face grim. He explained that a severe, sudden respiratory complication required an immediate, specialized procedure. Because of a temporary glitch in our military insurance processing system, the private hospital required a $5,500 down payment up front before they would initiate the treatment. My hands shook so violently I could barely unlock my phone. I called my husband, expecting the terror in my voice to bring him racing to the hospital with our joint savings card. Instead, the phone connected, and the background was filled with loud laughter, clinking glasses, and the distinct pop of a champagne cork. When I sobbed out that Lily was in the ER and needed $5,500 right now, he let out a cruel, dismissive laugh. "We just closed on our dream beach house, honey," he said proudly. "Every single cent we have is tied up in the down payment, and I took out a massive loan to secure it. It's an investment for our future social status. Figure it out yourself." Before I could even scream his name, my mother-in-law snatched the phone away. Her voice cut in, dripping with pure venom. "Stop calling my son to beg for money. Go ask the army to pay for it if you're so independent." Then, she hung up, leaving me in total darkness. The cold plastic chair in the waiting room felt like ice beneath me. The digital clock on the wall was a cruel reminder that time was running out for Lily. Every second that ticked by felt like a physical blow to my chest, and the weight of my husband's abandonment pressed down on me until I could barely breathe. I sat there completely broken, staring at my phone, wondering how the people who were supposed to be my family could leave an innocent 3-year-old child to suffer just to protect their own pride and luxury. Then, a shadow fell over me. I looked up, expecting a doctor with bad news, but instead, I saw my father-in-law, Arthur. He was a quiet, retired veteran who had spent decades being completely ignored and dominated by his arrogant wife and son. He looked around the hospital corridor to make sure they hadn't followed him, and without saying a word, he sat down next to me. He took my trembling hand and slipped a thick, heavy paper envelope into my palm. Inside was exactly $5,500 in cash. "I heard the phone call," he whispered, his eyes filled with a deep, painful shame. "I am so sorry for what my son has become. You wear the uniform, Violet, and you protect this country. You shouldn't have to protect your daughter from your own family." Within minutes, the hospital processed the payment, and the medical team rushed Lily into the procedure room. She was finally safe, and as the tension left my body, a cold, unyielding rage took its place. Once Lily's breathing stabilized and she fell into a deep, medicated sleep in the recovery ward, the immediate terror faded, leaving behind a sharp, clinical focus. I knew I couldn't stay in that marriage for another second, but I needed to know exactly what I was walking away from. Leaving Arthur to watch over my sleeping daughter, I drove back to our house under the cover of darkness. My heart hammered against my ribs as I unlocked the door to the home that suddenly felt entirely foreign. I bypassed our bedroom and went straight to the home office. What I discovered in those records made the blood freeze in my veins. My husband hadn't just drained our joint savings account to the absolute baseline to purchase that luxury beach house. The records showed that just 2 weeks prior, he had secretly executed a secondary mortgage on our primary residence, borrowing against the equity we had built together over years. As I scrolled through the digital loan documents, my jaw dropped. There, at the bottom of the closing paperwork, was my signature, perfectly forged. A deeper look into his recent message history revealed that his mother was the driving force behind the entire scheme. She had actively pushed him to strip every piece of liquidity from our marriage, texting him that an active-duty wife with a military income didn't need his family's assets. Burning with rage, I immediately downloaded every single document, statement, and text thread onto a secure drive. The very next morning, I bypassed my husband completely and walked straight into the base legal assistance office to present the evidence of forgery to a JAG officer. 2 days after the medical emergency, my phone buzzed with a text message from my husband. It was casual, almost mocking. "Did you get your little problem sorted out yet?" It read. "Anyway, you need to start packing your things this weekend. We need to move into the beach house immediately so we can rent out the primary property and cover the new monthly payments." Reading those words, every instinct screamed at me to unleash my fury, but I forced my fingers to remain steady. I knew that high-stakes digital warfare required absolute emotional discipline. I typed back a short, calm response. "Everything is handled. I'll see you in a few days." While he celebrated his perceived victory, believing he had successfully minimized my role in our family, my legal team was quietly dismantling his entire life. The JAG officer had coordinated directly with civilian law enforcement to flag the forged secondary mortgage documents. Armed with the forensic proof of the forgery and Arthur's detailed, sworn testimony regarding the family's true financial timelines, a judge issued an emergency order. By Friday afternoon, our joint accounts were completely frozen, and a formal fraud alert was placed on the closing papers of the luxury beach house. Next, I initiated an emergency relocation protocol through my military command. Within 48 hours, a logistics crew helped me quietly move Lily's belongings and my personal items into a secure, protected housing unit on the military base. I completely revoked his access to my military healthcare benefits, my deployment life insurance policies, and perfectly set, and he was walking right into it. On Saturday morning, 3 days after the hospital crisis, the silence of my new base housing unit was shattered by a violent, rhythmic thudding. It was the exact moment I had been waiting for. My husband was furiously pounding on the front door of our old house, only to realize I wasn't there, before tracking me down to the base perimeter gates where he was held until I agreed to face him outside the security office. He looked completely unhinged, his expensive designer shirt wrinkled, and his face twisted in pure desperation. His bank accounts were frozen. The luxury beach house deal had completely collapsed at the final hour due to the active fraud investigation, and his private lenders were already threatening him with immediate legal action. My mother-in-law arrived right behind him in her luxury sedan, slamming the door and marching toward me with her face red from shouting. She began screaming at the top of her lungs, accusing me of being a traitor, destroying her son's lifelong dream, and ruining their family's pristine social reputation over a minor financial misunderstanding. They both stood there, panting with rage, expecting me to cower under their combined pressure, just like I used to during our marriage. Instead, I stood tall, calmly folding my arms across my chest as 2 armed military police officers stepped out from the security post to flank me. I looked my husband dead in the eyes, my voice cutting through their noise like ice. "The game is over," I told him smoothly. "I have already filed for divorce, revoked all your access to my life, and handed the forensic proof of your forgery directly to the authorities. You wanted me to figure it out myself, and this is exactly how a logistics specialist handles a threat." The legal fallout over the next 2 months was swift, devastating, and entirely absolute. The local district attorney's office took the forensic evidence of the forged signatures incredibly seriously, officially hitting my husband with severe felony fraud charges. Without the secondary mortgage funds or access to our frozen joint accounts, the entire luxury beach house deal evaporated into thin air, leaving him and his mother completely exposed to the wrath of their private lenders. They were suddenly saddled with massive legal defense fees, broken contracts, and a completely shattered credit rating that ruined their social standing. The biggest shock, however, came from within their own household. Disgusted by the sheer cruelty his wife and son had shown toward his granddaughter's life, Arthur officially filed for divorce from my mother-in-law after 30 years of marriage. He legally separated his assets, completely cutting her off from his retirement funds, and chose to pack his things to move to a small apartment just 10 minutes away from my new base assignment. He wanted to be close to Lily, step up as the grandfather she deserved, and ensure we always had real family support. Watching their carefully constructed empire of borrowed luxury crumble to dust was the ultimate proof that justice always finds a way. 3 months later, Lily and I are thriving in our new, peaceful routine. Her health is completely restored, and her laughter fills the rooms of our quiet home, a sound that reminds me every single day of what is truly worth fighting for. Free from the constant weight of toxic manipulation and emotional abuse, I have rediscovered my own strength, supported every step of the way by Arthur's unwavering kindness. This journey taught me that real family isn't by the actions people take when you are at your absolute lowest point. Now, I want to turn this over to all of you who have followed my journey until the very end. What would you have done if your own spouse chose a luxury property over your child's life? Would you have stayed to fight or walked away as cleanly as I did? Please in the city you are watching from so I can see just how far Lily's story of survival has reached across the world. Your engagement truly helps our community grow. Meanwhile, I am leaving 2 other incredible, high-stakes family drama stories right here on the final screen. Them will definitely surprise you. Thank you so much for watching.